Disclaimer. All views expressed on What Makes Us Fire are solely those of the person or persons giving them. What Makes Us Fire does not represent or claim to represent any particular city or fire department or express their views, and therefore make the claim that all views and standpoints are affiliated with What Makes Us Fire and with What Makes Us Fire only. Any mention of certain fire departments or cities within the interviews are solely for informational and opinion-based dialogue. In short, if you have a problem with something that's published, please just say something and don't be a Richard. What Makes Us Fire? How you guys doing? Thank you for joining the show. On this episode, we have Sarah. She is a wife of a firefighter that I work with. She has some very, very interesting point of views on how she prepared for and then dealt with being a fire wife. Guys, her story is pretty damn cool. Please stick around, enjoy the episode, and please give Sarah a warm welcome to What Makes Us Fire.
All right, so the recording has started, and now the audio should have picked up. Thank you. Okay, so you're going to hear me go through a whole bunch of shit that I already told you. I'm telling you thank you again for coming, even though you've been here for like 30 minutes already, watching me bullshit around with stuff I don't know anything about on this. So, but last night I had an episode with your husband, Kurt.
Right.
And you were downstairs. Did you hear any of it?
No, not really. I just heard some laughing, and that was about it.
That was it? Okay, good. Good. Your name came up a couple times. Okay. And then his girlfriend's name came up a couple times.
Oh, really?
No. He doesn't have a girlfriend. As far as I know, he doesn't have a girlfriend. But we were talking, and I told him, and I've told you what kind of I wanted this, what I'm doing, what makes us fire to be about.
Right.
I'm trying to find that thing that, with all the diversity that's within the fire department, which isn't widely known really in the general public. I think the general public thinks that most firefighters are the same, that we all have the same ideals and all this other stuff, because you must be all the same. You're doing a crazy fucking job, right? So you all must be somewhat similar. We're not. And so I wanted to show that, but at the same time, because we're so different, I'm trying to find that explanation, that one thing that it is that makes us firefighters. Like there's something there that, even though we're all different, there's that one thing there that we all agree on.
Right. And
that's the job. But nobody can really pinpoint what that is.
Okay.
And I think that, personally, I think that we can get that through talking with the family, talking with the kids, talking with the parents, talking with the friends of all these people that are firefighters, and then everybody that's even just had an experience with firefighters. I think we can find a little bit of that answer in all of it, because they have, shut up dog, they have an outlook that's obviously different from ours.
Right. They're seeing a different side of it.
Right. It's like they're looking from the outside in, right?
Right.
But at the same time, that vision is misconstrued because of Hollywood, because of the news,
right?
And because it sensationalized stories and stuff like that. So the idea is to talk to you, get to know who you are, just as a human being, as a person, who you are.
Okay.
Because I think the people outside the fire department, like not actually working the job, but are involved and are within it, are just as diverse, and yet they still choose to stay in it.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So, so let's start off with your name's Sarah. You're married to Kurt.
Right.
Where exactly did you come from? Where did you grow up?
So I grew up in the Chicago area, a little ways away from Kurt, so we were about an hour apart from each other. So I grew up in the Chicago area. I've moved around quite a bit since college, so that's kind of been part of our relationship is a lot of long distance and a lot of moving around.
Oh, he didn't tell me that.
Really?
Yeah, no, you didn't tell me that you
Okay.
guys did the long distance thing. And when
Yeah.
you guys made it work,
Yeah, I mean, there was definitely challenges to it. Let's see. We started dating in 2000, summer of 2011, and I didn't think anything was going to come of it. I just figured it was just a summer relationship, summer fling, what have you, and then that would be it. We'd go off to college. And Kurt was like, no, I want to try to make this work. So I was like, okay, let's give this a try. So I went to school in Michigan to start off college for music education. And I liked it, but we were 5 hours away from each other.
how often would you guys see each other?
Once every 2 months, about.
Damn.
Yeah.
And how long did that go for?
So I was there for 2 years, and then I decided I wanted to do an internship with Disney, so then I moved to Orlando and pushed the distance even further.
And he was on you like a dog on a leash.
Not really. So, I mean, I feel like the long distance thing worked because, like, Skype, FaceTime, that was like our best friend.
Thank God for technology.
Yeah. So we were on there, almost every other night talking for an hour or two. He'd tell me how work was, I'd tell him how school was, and we'd just make it work that way. But then obviously, like I said, when I went to Florida, that really stretched and really tested our relationship further because we went from seeing each other once every 2 or 3 months to not seeing each other for 6 months.
Dang.
Yeah.
6 months?
Yep.
And all your interaction was either phone, Skype, Facebook, stuff like that?
Yep. So he dropped me off. Actually, I flew down there, and he drove my guitars and some extra stuff, and he was only there with me for 45 minutes. I didn't even get a full day with him the first day I was down there because I had to go to work orientation, and he had to come back for stuff at the fire department, classes, and he was volunteer at the time, so he had to be there for his next shift. So he's like, I have 2 days to get back, I have to get going, so we really only have like 45 minutes. So I was like going into that expecting like that was the last time I was ever going to see him, because I'm like, we've never gone this long without seeing each other,
Bro.
6 months.
That's a long time.
Yeah.
And after 6 months, let me make sure I understand. After 6 months, you only saw him for 45 minutes? Or after 6 months, it was finally he was able to come down and spend more time?
After 6 months, I moved back and went back to school. So the internship was only 6 months long. So he was so busy at that time because he was starting paramedic, and he didn't have time in his schedule to really devote to come down there for a certain stretch of time,
Right,
to make it worth the drive or the flight, which I got. And we just relied on like I said, Facebook, Skype, that sort of thing to stay in contact with each other.
well, I think you guys definitely made it work because it sounds like the communication was there.
Yeah, for sure.
There was a lot. I think people who are able to communicate,
Mhm.
whether they're sitting next to each other
Right.
or 1,000 miles apart, as long as you're able to communicate, you can make it work.
Right.
It's when you don't communicate that
Correct.
the ideas get in the head and
Right.
all that other stuff. So, but you guys. So when I first met Kurt, obviously I've already told him I heard some things about him in the fire department as a
Okay.
rookie. They weren't horrible, but they definitely weren't good either.
Okay.
And so he was coming to Station 5, and we're just like, oh, okay. Now, my crew, we like to form opinions on our own. We'll take what we hear
Mhm.
about whatever situation or person, but okay, that's in the back burner. This is just in case they do prove what we heard.
Okay.
But then when they come, we make our own decision. Well, Kurt totally blew past the rumors.
Preconceived notions you
Yeah,
guys
the
had.
rumors.
Okay,
Yeah. He blew past the rumors. He was not at all anything what we heard he was like. That's not to say he wasn't like that.
Okay.
It's just saying when he came to us, he was different. And so he started working with us, and then I think I met you. I think it was a holiday or something. You came to the station. Might have been Thanksgiving, or I can't remember the exact first time I met you.
Yeah, because I've met so many people passing that it makes it hard for me to really pinpoint when I met them.
Right.
Because they'll be like, oh, hey, how's it going? And I'm like, cool. I don't remember your name. It's been a hot minute since I've seen you. Like, so yeah, I don't remember the exact first time that we met. It probably was at the station.
Yeah, no, I don't remember the exact time when we met, but I remember my exact thinking of just being a human being and judging you based on your looks, never talking to you, right? So you came in and I was just like, oh, he's into rocker, emo type chicks. That's cool. So am I. Like tattoos, short hair. Like,
yeah.
I mean, Nightmare Before Christmas is one of your favorite movies, which is one of my favorite movies ever. So, like, my wife and my kids hate watching it with me because I will literally every single word of that movie, every song, I am either mumbling it and or singing it.
So you'll sing the whole movie. Okay. We have stuff like that like Kurt and I can't watch it anymore because I'll sing all the songs from the movie.
Well, and Lion King was my favorite Disney movie when I was a kid, when I was 7, 8, 9 years old. And you have a brand new freaking tattoo, scar and everything else. And I'm like, God, we probably get along way better than we ever thought we ever would. But you came in and, you're like, Kurt's, this is my wife. And I was just like, makes sense. Like, he looks like he would be with someone like you. Like, there is something, even though people say profiling's wrong, and if you see somebody, you just can't assume. But there is some truth to some of that stuff. You can look at somebody in a big old cowboy hat, big ass boots. You can probably assume he drives a truck and or has worked on a ranch. Like, there's certain little aspects that you can see in somebody, right?
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
I mean, if it's funny because it's true, that whole thing.
Yeah.
So I was like, all right, I see that. That makes sense. And then a few months down the road, I think he finally invited me over to the house, or he invited me over to your house a couple of times. We couldn't make it, and then finally, the one time we could, that was really like the first time we were able to hang out.
Yeah.
And kind of talk and get to know each other a little bit. I think you're a little quiet in general.
I am. I'm very introverted. Kurt says he's introverted too, but I think he's a bit more extroverted than I am. For sure.
Really?
Yeah.
I think that is. Why do you think that you're so introverted?
I don't know. I like spending time by myself. Kurt likes to joke and compare me to my cats, that I'm like a cat. My personality is like a cat. I don't like being around people too much. I don't like too much attention, but then I obviously go through points in time where I'm like, hey, I want to hang out with people, but then I also want my own time, so.
You sound exactly like Melinda.
Really?
Yeah. Did she talk to you about the Myers-Briggs?
Yeah.
The INTJ and all that
Yep,
other
she
stuff?
had me take it.
Yeah? She has been really on to that and stuff, and it sounds like something you'd be interested in. Because she's the same way. She wants to be on her own.
Yeah.
She wants to be on her own and everything, but she has those spurts of where I want to get out, I want to talk to people.
Right.
You're cool, honey, but I'm getting fucking tired of you. Can we talk to other people?
Right.
So, but yeah, I figured, okay, I thought she's quiet. I couldn't get a real sense of your thoughts about Kurt being a firefighter, right?
Okay.
So let me rephrase it. There's wives out there that if you went to their house, have signs posted everywhere. This is a firehouse. I'm a fire wife. Every other
Oh, yeah,
post on
for sure.
Facebook is, my husband's a firefighter. This is what he does. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think it's annoying, but in general, there's nothing wrong for people doing what they want to do. I think it's annoying as fuck, but you weren't like that at all. There was literally, I couldn't find but maybe a picture or two fire related in your home. There was
Gotcha.
no,
Okay.
there wasn't any of this.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, we do own a couple of these exact signs, but they're in the garage.
they're in the
And
garage.
the tin ones,
Right.
they're hanging up in the garage. But it wasn't like I was like, no, we're not putting anything up, or, I don't want to see any of this, because obviously I'm proud of what he does. And I do know people, like you said, that are like that it's everywhere in their house. We had friends from his old station that he walked in the house and the walls were red and gray, and the table had the Maltese cross on it. Like, you could tell that she was like really into her husband's job, which was great. And I walked into this expecting Kurt to be like that, and I gave him the option, like, we can put up more stuff, and he's like, no, we'll hang up some stuff here and there, but he didn't feel the need to like buy tons of it and hang it all over the house.
Yeah, I don't actually. Everything you see is gifts. I did not purchase one thing. This is from an old truck, and it's a 5-inch hose wrench that we have. It holds the wrenches.
Okay.
But it was old and rusty and everything. They said I can take it, so I was like, oh, that's cool. This was a gift. That was the only thing I paid for, but it was my class helmet from when I went through Fire Academy.
Oh, that's cool.
So at the end of the academy, what I started to do was just have everybody sign the helmet. And apparently that was the first year somebody thought to do that.
Okay.
So I was like, all right, cool. I thought of something cool.
Yeah, we have some of Kurt's old helmets. They're not like signed like that, but we do have those around the house too.
So what do you think? Okay, obviously when you started the relationship with him, he was already volunteering.
Right,
Or-
he was about to start volunteering.
He was
We
about to
started
start.
dating right after we got out of high school.
Okay.
So he
and
was brand spanking new.
that's right. He said he started when he was 19. So you
Right.
must have just graduated and then
Yeah.
went into it. So you started dating. He tells you, hey, I'm going to do this.
Yeah. I thought it was cool. I thought it was different, because you hear a lot of people that they either don't know what they want to do when they get out of school, or they go into the typical jobs, finance, or medical jobs, stuff like that. So I was like, cool, that's different, that's neat. So I was supportive of it. I didn't know a whole lot of what went into the job. And he would tell me stuff here and there as he started taking classes, and I was like, that's interesting. But for the most part, I started looking into it on my own, which I think was good and bad, because my immediate thing was I was like, well, I want to know more of what goes on. I would go to the station that he volunteered at, but I never saw anything firsthand. So I started watching stuff like Ladder 49. And that was, I think, a terrible introduction into his job, because then I went from like, cool, this is an awesome job, to, oh my God, I'm so worried about him all the time.
Right. Well, I for everybody listening out there that's thinking of starting a relation with a firefighter, do not watch Ladder 49 right off the bat. That's a horrible, horrible idea. But just know that's all Hollywood too.
Right.
But
Right.
Okay, so you watch Ladder 49. You're constantly worried, but is it a worry that's like, oh my God, every time he goes, he might not come back, or is it a worry like, I don't want him to go like that?
It was a worry that every time he'd go to work, I'd worry that he wasn't going to come back. Or I'd get that phone call that he's like in a burning building and he's not going to make it out. So that freaked me out. And so then I tried to seek out more information, online and through social media and stuff, what have you. And I was starting to read like Firewife blogs because we'd been dating at this point now for a couple of years. And it was hard to find information on how someone in the relationship felt about being with a firefighter. So Firewife blogs was the only way I was finding info.
Mm-hmm.
So I would go on there and read stuff, and I was reading that these wives were proud of their husbands, but then also there was a dynamic of a lot of them that seemed frustrated or ended up walking towards divorce because there was not enough time spent together, or they felt like his life was divided, between the firehouse and home life and stuff. And so I got worried because I was hearing that like there was a high divorce rate, between firefighters and wives, and I was like, oh no, what have I gotten myself into? Our relationship seems okay right now, but like I don't know what it's going to turn into down the road. And I kind of like prematurely started to worry about it. But then the more that I've looked back on it, I actually think the fact that our relationship was very, very long distance, that kind of helped things and kind of prepped me.
When you say that, yeah, absolutely. I think because you guys had that long distance relationship, him becoming a firefighter actually made it probably very easy for you guys to transition into that. Because you go from 2 to 3 months not seeing each other to 6 months not seeing each other, and now you only have to not see him once every third day.
Right.
That's nothing.
Right.
Right. So, but I want to go back to the whole Firewives blog stuff and everything else. So, you watch Ladder 49. Well, shit. Now you're afraid for his life.
Right.
You go on the wife blog page. Well, now not only are you worried that he's going to die, now you're worried that you're going to get divorced later on.
Right.
Now you find out he's more likely to get cancer than the general population. You find out divorce rates a lot higher. We're in the top 5 for divorce rates. We're in the top 5 for suicide. We're in the top 5 for cancer. I don't know if you know any of those.
Oh yeah, no, I do.
I'm sure you do. So, when you learn all this, right, and a lot of people, they go at the beginning of relationships, right, especially with first responders, anybody that's a civil servant, I think that Hollywood puts an idea out there that it's some type of trophy wife-ish-esque feel.
Okay, yeah,
like,
I can see that.
Oh, I'm dating a firefighter, or I married a cop, or my husband's this, my wife's that, within the civil service, because Hollywood makes us out to be these badass superheroes. The news makes us out to be these badass superheroes. And what I think people don't realize is, out of all the firefighters in the world, the stations and everything you see on the news and everything like that, those are once in a lifetime calls.
Yeah. That's not something you guys see every day, or even, maybe not even once a month. If
that.
Right.
So, when you see all this stuff and, you finally realize, hey, I'm going to marry this man, or he asks you to marry you, or whatever. It sounds like you almost prepared yourself.
I kind of did.
You prepared yourself. You did the research. You found out, okay, hey, these are the things I'm going to have to look out for.
Yeah.
Later on down the road.
Yeah. I think I kind of started doing that also because, like I said, I would go to visit his volunteer department, but that was really all I knew about the job. I would hear stories every now and then. He wasn't always the most open to talking about what he was seeing on a daily basis. So I didn't always know, what he was going through, what he was seeing. So because of that, I started, doing more research and trying to find out more information that route, so I knew down the line what was coming when he started on a full-time department.
Okay. But have you noticed any change since you started a full-time department?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's less hectic for him. So when he started on the volunteer department, they were paid on call. and they had to get to the station, you know, as fast as they could before the engine would leave so they could get to the call. So he bought a house that was 5 minutes from the station. I mean, he could have literally sprinted through our backyard to get to the station. He was that close. But there was like a stretch of grass in between, so you'd have to take your car and go around. So yeah, he was always running, and you know, the pager was his life, and you know, it was always on. It would scare me in the middle of the night sometimes because it would go off really loud, and he was like, "Oh, I got to be at a call," go flying out the door. Or you know, we'd be sitting on the couch for the day, and we didn't have much going on, and you know, we'd think about, you know, doing something for the day, but he'd be like, we can hang out or watch a movie or whatever, but I can't leave town. If we go out to eat, we got to bring it back to the house because I got to be home in case the pager goes off. So everything kind of revolved around the pager when he was volunteer, whereas now with him being full-time, he's able to know like when he's on call, when he's not on call, and he can kind of separate the two a little more.
Did you end up resenting that pager? You can be
Only
honest.
during the night when it would go off, or when it would ruin other moments.
And I'm assuming that pager ruined a lot of moments.
Several,
yeah. No, my wife's the same way. She almost resented the fact when I was volunteer for Kima. She did not.
Yeah.
Dad. She really resented the fact that I became a firefighter.
Really?
Yeah, I think she thought that how the volunteer work was how it's going to always work.
Okay.
So if we were in the middle of something, I was going to have to leave. Or
okay. That's
we
fair
can't
though, because
really...
I kind of started to think that too at one point. I didn't know how different full-time really was from volunteer.
Okay. Yeah. I then I can see why resentment would start building. So you guys come back. You came to Texas after all this, after your internship. You went back to school.
Yeah.
I'm assuming from somewhere there he asked you to marry him.
Yep.
You say yes. You guys get married, and then there's a decision to come to Texas somewhere in there.
Yeah. So the decision to come to Texas was actually before we got married. It was a mutual decision. It was mainly pushed by myself, though, because I lived in so many different states throughout college. I lived in Michigan, Florida, and then Chicago, kind of rotating in that cycle, because after my internship, I switched schools and went back to Chicago. So I was seeing Kurt a little more often, every other weekend, so stuff got a little better on that front. But I still wasn't happy in Chicago. I hated the weather, most of all. You know, living in somewhere like Florida where it can be super hot, but it's still beautiful most of the year, I resented the cold. And so I wanted out. And I also just felt like there was more out there. There's more to offer us than staying in Illinois. You know, I wasn't super thrilled there. You know, I had family that lived in California, and, you know, they moved out there on a whim and they made it work. So I was like, why can't we? So we started looking at other places to live, and it actually wasn't always going to be Texas.
Really?
Yeah. So there was the part of me that wanted to go back to Florida because I loved it there. Part of me wanted to move out to California, and then there was a part of that process that we were looking at moving to Las Vegas.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it was between those three and then Texas.
Texas just kind of fell on your lap, or it just kind of came out of the blue?
So
the way you're saying it sounds like Texas was the afterthought, is what it sounds like. It's like California, Vegas, Florida.
So we were making the decision based on where I could find work.
Oh, okay.
Is how that was getting handled. Because we knew that Kurt, you know, like you said in your first podcast, it's not always easy to get on a fire department, but we still knew it would be easier for him to find work than it would be for me to find work.
Right.
Because I was working in doing music for video games. And so that's a very niche field. and
Yeah.
hard to find work. So I was looking where the companies were at. And so we were going to kind of plan a life around where we could find a company that I could work for. So California was one of them. We went out there and looked at it, and I still to this day love it out there, but the cost of living was just too much.
Very much so.
Florida, there was actually more opportunity for Kurt down there than me, but the part of me that worked for Disney and loved it just wanted to go back for that aspect. But I knew I probably wouldn't find work in my field down there, so that got crossed out. And then it was between Texas and Las Vegas, and Las Vegas, I was looking at working to do sound effects for slot machines, because that's also like a part of the field. So we were looking at that, and then we ended up coming down here to look at apartments first before we went out to Vegas. And we came down here and we were kind of striking out on finding somewhere to live. And then some friends of ours that Kurt actually knew from back up at his volunteer department were living down here.
Oh, okay.
Just friends of his from in town. And they're like, come check out our place, see how you like it, and see like the Kemah Seabrook area. So that's where we went, and we really liked it. We fell in love with it, and we fell in love with that apartment complex that they were living at. So we're like, we're just gonna stop here, and this is what we're gonna pick, because we were kind of tired of looking at all the options at this point. So that's how we settled on down here.
Right, but you settled on down here in an apartment, not necessarily on a job.
Correct.
Or
yeah, but I knew that there was still a good chunk of companies down here that I could work for.
Okay.
So I transferred within my current job and then started looking for work from there.
Okay, all right. Yeah, because I remember the story you guys told me that you guys came down here and Kurt came with you. He didn't have
Yeah, he didn't have a job
anything
lined
lined
up.
up.
Nope.
Nothing, and it was
Correct.
just on your salary that you guys moved.
Yeah, which was crazy thinking about it now, because at the time I was working for Hot Topic for several years, and I just transferred within the company to a mall down here, and we lived off my salary
Wow.
from that, and that was rough.
How long did that go for?
About a year.
What?
Actually, no, a little shorter than that. I want to say it was about 7 or 8 months, because then Kurt took a job with a private ambulance company.
Oh, yeah, that's right. He did tell me. He worked for the private ambulance company. And those do suck, by the
Yeah,
way.
he was miserable.
Yeah. But, okay, cool. So he finally finds the job
Yeah.
here. And that's basically it, right? So you already had an idea of him being a firefighter. You didn't really know the paid part of it.
Yeah.
You do now.
Yeah.
So from all that, you said you met friends and stuff up there from his volunteer fire department. Have
Correct.
you noticed a difference in the families and friends from a volunteer aspect to a paid aspect? Or are like the family and friends kind of the same?
I want to say it's kind of the same. I mean, we didn't spend a whole lot of time I personally didn't spend a whole lot of time with like his coworkers and their families outside of his work. That was usually his thing, where on like one night a week they'd all get together after work and go to the bar and just hang out for a little while and talk and what have you. I would see them only occasionally when there would be like a parade that everyone was in for 4th of July or something.
Oh, okay.
So I wasn't seeing them constantly.
It wasn't like with us where we come over to each other's
No, this
houses
is a
and hang
totally
out.
different aspect. So that's something that I actually think is really neat. And I've told Kurt before, I thought it was just like me being introverted, but your guys' job is so different from a normal job in the sense that you really do have that family dynamic and aspect from the firehouse that you don't get at other jobs, because you guys, you talk and hang out outside of work far more than someone in a normal job does.
Yeah, I believe that's definitely true. I believe there's definitely, and within the fire department, we're all different. So even the guys that we do hang out with outside the job are usually the guys that we have stuff in common with.
Right.
Right. But inside the job, the guys that we don't have anything in common with outside the job, we still get along with them great inside the job. At the firehouse, the family and stuff. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Our job is very much family oriented. I mean, we live in like I said before, we live in a firehouse, right?
Yeah.
There's some stations, some houses that there are no separate bunk rooms like our station, right? It's
really?
It's just one big room like you see on the Hollywood TV shows, right? And there's a bed over here, bed over there, nothing separating them, right? So at 2:00 in the morning, if one of the farts really loud and wakes you up, you're hearing it.
Right.
You're hearing it.
Yeah.
It happens. And it's just like that's how close you are with these people. Have you found that those firefighters, right, are that family aspect, have you found it easy to get along with the other firefighters coming and to the house saying hi? Like it's almost like, hey, you're part of Kurt? All right, cool. We don't even need to introduce ourselves almost.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'd say I've gotten pretty used to it. Like I said, I feel like that's where I see the major difference between that and volunteer is the family aspect is a lot deeper, I think, for full time because you're spending more time with each other. So yeah, people coming over, planned or impromptu, I've gotten pretty used to it and I'm cool with it, so.
Do you enjoy being part of this life?
Yeah, definitely.
Do you think knowing what you know now, right?
Yeah.
And I think Kurt said he's been doing this for 7 years now, 8 years in the room. And you've been there the whole time.
Right.
What would you tell yourself, your 8 years ago self? Would you be like, hey, it's going to be really fucking hard. You might want to really think about this. Or is it going to be like, let me give you some tips and tricks to make it a little bit easier? Or are you going to be like, hey, at the end, it's totally fucking worth it and just not do anything or change anything?
I'd say it's worth it. I think I would tell myself that I need to calm the fuck down and stop researching stuff because I feel like that didn't necessarily help the situation. I mean, I did get more of an insight of like what goes on, but it still, it barely scratched the surface of what it's really like. You're getting that outsider's perspective kind of still, even though you're reading blogs from firewives, you're still not personally in their shoes.
Right. And everybody has their own experiences, right? So, but there is something to say about firewives or anybody in that fire life experiencing certain situations that are the same.
Yeah.
Right. But what people don't realize, and what I think people don't realize, is though the situation's the same, your outlook and how you deal with that situation can be completely different.
Right.
Right. A wife on the fire blog complaining that her husband's always at work and she feels neglected and all that other stuff. There could be another wife who has a husband that works the same exact hours, but her outlook is, when he comes home, we make every minute worth it because I understand what he's doing at the job.
Yeah.
So she has no resentment at the fact that he's gone and working. Yeah. She just enjoys the time she has with him, where the other one has resentment at the job because she feels like she's getting neglected by the job.
Yeah. And I mean, I will say that there's times where it's difficult, like especially holidays. Like sometimes holidays can be rough, but I feel like for the most part, we've made that work, and there's been holidays where he's been working and I get invited to come and have Thanksgiving dinner at the firehouse or something. So I still get to spend a little bit of time with him on that day, maybe. And even if I don't that year, I still know like, hey, he'll be home the next day. We'll make it work the next day.
So I think it goes back again to the beginning of what we said. Y'all's communication works really well.
Yeah.
Like you feel like the fact that you guys communicate about what's happening, what's going on, is good.
Yeah.
You know, I'm gonna go a little bit serious here. Has
Okay.
he? You know, we see shit.
Yeah.
We see some really dark shit. We see some really bad shit. Has he ever? Let me redo that. Sorry, I got a reverb. Has he ever came to you and said, "Hey, I just saw something really bad," or just I don't want to talk to you right now, or just been completely shut off, or just you're like, "How's his day? How was your day?" And I don't want to fucking talk about it. Leave me alone.
Yeah, there's been times where he's come home and I know he's seen something rough and he doesn't go into detail or talk about it really. Sometimes a couple hours later, you know, his family will call and they'll ask him and he'll finally start to talk about it. So that can get frustrating sometimes because it's like, I asked you this morning what you saw and you didn't tell me. And I want to, you know, get an idea, get in your head of what's going on. But he's seen stuff and then maybe he'll tell me later on, maybe he won't. So I know that stuff eventually, you know, it could get to anyone.
Do you want to know that stuff? Do you care to know that stuff? Because I know. So the reason why I'm asking is because as civil servants, cops, firefighters, nurses, we all get asked that question. What's the worst thing you've ever seen?
Yeah.
Or what's the worst call you've ever been to? It's a curiosity thing. And before I always answer that question, I always tell them, all right, I'm going to tell you what that question means to me.
Mm-hmm.
And if you still want to know the answer, I'll tell you. What that question means to me is, hey, what's the worst day in your life that you don't want to relive? Can you go ahead and tell me what that was?
Yeah.
Do you still want to know the answer?
No.
Yeah. but that's to me, right? People are like, well, yeah, I've seen a whole bunch of shit, and they'll tell you right off the bat. But to me, that's like you're asking me to relive the worst day on the job.
Yeah.
Right?
Right, and that's hard for you because you're not going to want to talk about it. So
I don't mind talking about it. Okay, I don't mind talking about it, but what I want people to understand asking that question is what they're really asking.
Okay.
You're not just asking, hey, did you see a bone sticking out of skin?
Right.
You know, when you say what's the worst thing you've ever seen, you're asking us, what's that thing you saw that fucked you up in your head?
Yeah.
That's how we interpret that. That's how I interpret that question, and I think that's how a lot of first responders interpret that question. Now, you're a wife of a firefighter, so wanting to know that is not necessarily a curiosity aspect, but maybe you want to know because you want to know how you can help.
Yeah.
Right?
For sure.
But do you even want to know in the first place, I guess is where I'm getting at. Or do you care if he doesn't share? Or
I get when he wants to keep stuff to himself. It's hard because I want to be there for him, but I also understand, like, if he doesn't feel like sharing it, you know, that's okay. When he first started working full time and first started really seeing stuff, I didn't want to know so much. So, like, one of his first calls, there was a point in time where he was going on calls and dealing with a lot of people dying. Like, he was saying that he was like a black cloud for a while. So his first call at one point on a new station was he had to go and cut a woman down that was hanging from a tree in her backyard. So I was shocked by that, and I wasn't used to hearing stuff like that, and so I wasn't super keen on finding out, you know, day to day what he was seeing. But over time, I feel like my curiosity eventually started to peak, and I wanted to hear more about what he was seeing. Obviously, there's going to be days where it's far worse than others, but I still kind of wanted that glimpse of what was going on. And I think that's kind of, as time's gone on, that started to get to me more because now I'm going back to school and going more into kind of what you guys see. I'm going back to school for forensic pathology.
Oh, that's badass. You need to talk to my 14-year-old daughter. She can actually probably teach you a thing or two.
Really?
Yeah. We're totally sidebarring here, but one of her first books she ever read was Understanding the Criminal Mind.
Oh, cool.
So she would, after she read that book at like 9, 10 years old, she was able to talk to somebody for 5 minutes and say, oh, he's a little bit of a narcissist. He has a little bit of sociopathic tendencies.
Wow. That's interesting.
Yeah. So, but anyway, so you're going into the forensics thing.
Yeah.
So you're gonna see some pretty fucked up stuff. So is your idea are you trying to get on like to help police work? Are you doing it for research stuff? Because there's different fields within that.
So I am more interested. I'm kind of at an impasse right now because I start school this month, and so I feel like more time I spend with it, I'll get a better idea of exactly what I want to do with it. I am interested in the police side of it, specifically like forensics, in regards to like ballistics. I find that very interesting. But then I'm also interested in the side of working for autopsy and helping process an autopsy and figuring out cause of death. And I think part of that has come from, I want to be on part of it is my own interest, but part of it I think is also the spectrum of I want to be closer to what you guys are seeing and having a better idea of what you guys go through day to day. Obviously, you guys aren't dealing with criminals or people dying every single day, but you guys see that time to time, and I want a better idea of, how to be there for Kurt and, see the stuff myself and get a better idea of what it's like to, just deal with that on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, well, and if that's one of the reasons why that's awesome, because you're actually putting yourself out there to try to understand. But at the same time, I always tell people, we always make decisions for our significant others, and that's great, and that's good, and you should do that. You should work with each other, make compromises and stuff like that. But at the same time, I don't think you should ever make yourself uncomfortable for the other person, right?
Yeah.
As much as you love them, you should not be uncomfortable for them. So if you ever find yourself uncomfortable, you can take my advice for what it is. If you ever feel yourself uncomfortable or something like that, don't let wanting to be more on par or more on playing with Kurt be a deciding factor with that.
Yeah. No, I mean, there is a good chunk of like my own personal interest in it, and I've started to watch more things on Instagram and follow people that work in the field where they post and show what they're seeing on a day-to-day basis. And I find it very interesting. It's just, this was basically the only thing that's really been piquing my interest, other than the fact that I've always studied art and music, and that was it. Nothing else has really piqued my interest until this point.
Well, that's cool. Well, good luck.
Thanks.
Have fun with it. Okay, so this goes back to the whole wanting to know what he is seeing, and I think a lot of it is, aside from that random, I just met you, they found out I'm a firefighter, hey, what's the worst thing you ever saw?
Yeah.
I think aside from that, I think the people that are close and within the fire life, they want to know so they can help you through it. They don't want to know because they're interested necessarily so much in what it was. They're concerned because they see it changed you in some way.
Yeah.
They don't care what exactly it was. They care more that it had affected you a certain way, and to know about it might be able to help them help you get through it.
Yeah.
Do you think that's accurate?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think it is. I think, again, that's part of why I'm interested in what I'm interested in now for going back to school. But yeah, part of it is, I want to be able to help Kurt and, help him process what he sees at work.
Do you think that doing the pathology and all that stuff, um, obviously you think it's going to get you closer to him, but do you think it's going to get you closer to him more on the idea that you're kind of seeing the aftermath, or do you think it's going to help you get closer to him more on a psychological level? Because obviously you guys look at things, you guys can both look at the same thing and see a difference, the whole glass half
Right.
empty, half full thing.
I don't think it would bring us on the same psychological level, because obviously we're two very different people, despite how well we communicate and stuff. I think it's more so the first thing you mentioned. It's just understanding and wanting to experience kind of what you guys experience.
Right, and we experience. So you'll have the experience. You won't necessarily have the same psychological experience of it. Okay, but you just want to get that one step closer.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's awesome. I mean, you don't meet very many people that want to understand on that level. They they want to understand firefighters, but just don't show them the blood. Don't show them the shit. Don't show me the bad parts. What's all the good parts? How was your training? Training went good. Awesome. You put out the fire. Nobody got hurt. Awesome.
Yeah.
They just want to hear those stories
Yeah.
and stuff. And I don't think they ever want to hear the bad shit. And there's a lot of bad shit. There's a lot of stuff. So, has any of the bad shit or any of the stories that Kurt has shared with you, have any of them personally affected you? What I mean by that is, has he told you something, said something, you saw something from him, and then all of a sudden you kind of like it touched you on a way that you probably couldn't share with Kurt right off the bat?
Not. That's a hard question. I mean, he did mention one call a while ago that, like, it was difficult for me to process because I couldn't believe what he was telling me, but he said that he had went on a call that it was a car wreck and somebody on a motorcycle had gotten pinned underneath, like, a semi-truck, and they couldn't get them out. The guy, he lost his legs, and he was basically burning alive, and they weren't able to do anything to get him out of there. I believe, you'd have to obviously hear the story from Kurt, but I'm pretty sure he had already passed at the point of the crash, but it was still, you saw him burning under that truck. And so, like, me trying to picture what he was seeing, that was kind of shocking for me. Like, oh my God, like, you just came home after seeing that. Like, it was just a shocking thing to hear. It's not something you hear every day. So I think that kind of gave me more respect for him work-wise. But then it also made me wonder, like, how do you guys process after seeing something like that? Like, how do you guys deal with that?
Well, because the story stuck with you, right?
Right.
And if it was just the story alone stuck with you.
Yeah.
Like, how is it affecting them?
Right.
Yeah. The reason why I asked that is because there's been instances and times where people will hear something that happened really bad, and they're like you. They're like, wow, that is fucking horrible. Like, oh my, that literally makes me sad inside. How the hell are you dealing with it? And it's not necessarily the call, but it is like, it's the processes, right? The processing that more people are like, how the fuck?
Right.
How the fuck are you doing that? Like, really? You're seeing all this and you're able to go to Whataburger afterwards? Like, wash your hands, get the blood off your elbow. Okay, I'm hungry. You know, like, it's hard to explain. And the way I explained it to Kurt, and I think really a lot of firefighters will explain it this way, and it's different for everybody, but I think the general way is that everything's human, right? Our thought process is everything's human until we get literally out of the truck at the scene, right? So, motor vehicle accident. We'll drive, we're listening to dispatch information, we're like, oh damn, fuck, that sounds like it's pretty bad. Damn, we roll around the corner, we see a car flipped on its side, we see somebody pinned, we're like, shit, that looks bad, holy fuck. But as soon as we step off the truck, that shit, holy fuck, is gone.
Okay.
It's like a switch. It automatically now becomes work.
Okay.
And Kurt, I think, said it really well, and it's like, it sounds like a dick, but they're not human anymore. They're not a human being. They're a job.
Okay.
Our job is to save that human being, but our concern on a human level is put on the back burner, because now we have to do these steps, this job, to make sure that you stay alive,
Right.
to mitigate a bad situation. We're trained to, okay, shit's bad, we know it's bad, this is what it can mean to the human body, this is what I need to do to mitigate those things that are happening to the human body, this is what I need to make sure the car doesn't flip anymore, these are the tools I need, this is what I need to do when I have the tools. Like, it's literally a step by step by step process, and it's no longer a, how old is she? Man, she looks really bad. Like,
You
that
need to separate
human
yourself
aspect,
emotionally.
yeah,
from
that
the
emotion,
situation.
that emotion you have for that human being, seeing them, knowing that there's some pain there and stuff like that, it gets separated, and it's like, all right, hey, we're gonna do this job because we need to save this person, and we're gonna do everything we can to save that person. And that's why sometimes you'll get people that they do everything they can on the scene, and yet the patient still passes away, or the job wasn't completely done. I mean, the job was completely done, but the outcome wasn't the best, right?
Yeah.
But then at the end of that, you'll hear people say, "We did everything we could," and then they just go on with their day. And that's kind of how we have to think about it sometimes. Are there calls where we're like, did we do everything we could? Yeah, sure, obviously, right?
Yeah.
Especially when you wanted a different outcome. We do not like failing. Nobody likes failing,
Right.
but we really don't like failing, because when we fail, that means somebody else has to deal with those consequences.
Right.
But it's like, for us, we have to dehumanize, and we almost become mechanical in our actions. We're obviously processing our actions, but it's like our training takes over is the best way I can think about it.
Okay.
We have to dehumanize the patient so we can do the job and the tasks that we were trained to do.
Yeah.
And then we do that through screams of pain. We do that through family yelling to help them. We've done it through, buildings collapsing around us. We've done it with trucks and sirens and horns and noise, people yelling, commands, all that stuff. With all that stuff going on, it's like a sensory overload, but we're still able to complete it. And what I love to call it is the most organized fucking chaos you'll ever see.
Okay.
So, but yeah, and that's what we do. That's how we process it. Do you think that Kurt maybe shows that kind of processes outside of the job? Do you think sometimes when you guys go out or you guys argue or have a discussion or a conversation, he kind of switches?
Kind of. I mean, he's very level-headed and calm, so arguments don't often escalate to actual arguments. They're usually just heated debates of talking. But no, I definitely could see that aspect, and sometimes when we do stuff, he kind of separates from the situation and treats it as a job in order to get the task done.
Yeah, like working on a car.
Right.
Or getting the lawn done.
Right.
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 So it is to us, and it sounds really bad. It sounds so bad. But yeah, that's how we deal. Do you Do you find yourself ever, or have you ever found yourself thinking maybe this life isn't really something you were prepared for? Maybe don't regret being in it, but maybe that you would be able to change and to be okay?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely different, but I also, because I've gotten so used to this, I can't picture what my life would be in a different scenario, if you get what I'm saying.
Yeah. Well, I guess the only way it'd be different is if you weren't with Kurt.
Right.
Right. And you can't see yourself without him.
Right.
Well, that's good. That's good. Do you hear that, Kurt? She can't see herself without you, and she's sitting right here next to me. Just saying. Yesterday, I told him, I was like, yeah, you have a beautiful wife, Sarah. And he goes, yeah, I tell her all that time. And I said, I tell her too. I don't have her phone number. And he's like, I'll text it to you. And I was like, all right. And well, there we go. We'll get into that, into the humor aspect of it and how we treat each other. So obviously, I mean, Firehouse Talk is very dark and humorous. We always busting balls. But there's those cardinal rules. Wives and children are off limits unless the wife is cool with it, right?
Yeah.
I think you're cool with it. I think everybody knows Melinda's cool with it.
Yeah.
So that's why you're kind of like a little bit of free game to pick on Kurt about. But have you ever found yourself a little bit taken back by some of the stuff you've seen, heard, or
like jokes that he's said?
Jokes that he said, jokes that maybe other firefighters have said, things you've seen other firefighters do.
Okay.
Stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, some of the jokes he said the first time not all of them, but the first time hearing them, I'm like, wow, that's kind of dark. But then I'll listen to him tell it to other people, and I get used to hearing it, and I'm like, this sounds cheesy. Like I'm kind of over the joke, and I'm like, yeah, this is just cheesy at this point. So.
Yeah, well, the reason why I asked, because I had my wife on, and we were doing the podcast, and I was telling her about how, we are at the firehouse, our jokes are pretty dark, and it's usually like a coping mechanism.
Yeah.
You know, we have to laugh at the bad shit, because if we didn't, we'd cry all the time.
Yeah.
And she was just like, yeah, like dead baby jokes. And so we started laughing, and then I go, dead babies aren't funny. And Melinda goes, without missing a beat, she goes, no, but jokes about them are. Like, without missing a beat right afterwards. And it was like, she would fit in the fire. Like, and that's why I always tell people she fits in the firehouse fucking perfect. She has made guys blush.
Really?
Coming into the firehouse. There is a lieutenant there. He's a lieutenant now, but at the time he was just another firefighter. And me and my wife were going through some fighting and stuff. And I had an iPad at the time, and I pull out my iPad, and I saw, I have a screensaver on it, and he goes, there's your fucking problem. That's why she's pissed off at you. You got big titty blonde bitches all over your freaking iPad. Right? I flip the iPad.
Yeah.
And I show him. It's my wife in a blonde wig.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So tell her that this happens, right?
Yeah.
And about a month down the road, she comes to the station. Wearing the blonde wig.
Really?
Yeah. So he's just like, oh, I fucking hate you. But she is totally cool with doing stuff like that. And I think it's really rare that you find people that are like that. I think you're like that too. I think you're a little bit, and this is, you can tell me shut the fuck up. But yeah, I do agree with that you are a little introverted.
Yeah.
Even when there's a lot of people around, you're still a little quiet.
Yeah.
You listen more than engage, but when engaged, you're present.
Yeah.
This is what I've noticed in just the few times that we've hung out.
No, I'd say that's pretty accurate.
Okay. And when I say that, like, because even when the crazy stuff is happening around you, you involve yourself in it, but you're still not as loud as everybody else.
Yeah.
I'm pretty loud at parties.
Yeah.
You didn't have to agree so fast. No, I mean, so apparently I'm an ENT, whatever my wife will tell you. But I'm extroverted to the point where I don't have to be the center of attention, but if nobody else is talking and nobody else is entertaining, I'm okay with being that person.
Okay.
You know, and if it gets taken away from me, I'm cool with it too. Like, hey,
Yeah.
somebody else did something more crazy, is being a little more loud. Cool. Hey, let's go for it, man. Awesome. Or girl, whatever.
Yeah.
So I've never, I think Kurt's told you, and I think you've seen for yourself, you don't tell me I'm not going to do something,
Yes, I've heard that story.
because I will do it.
Yeah.
Like, don't bet me because you think it's just so outlandish, I won't do it. Barring me actually getting in trouble or possibly losing my job or hurting somebody,
Right.
I won't do those things. But hey, I dare you to jump off that roof naked, and you asked me to do that while we were just walking down the street towards the store,
Yeah.
just out of the blue. I'm gonna do it. Like, that's,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? It's like those YouTube guys that will do random shit. Like, they'll be walking down the street on a boardwalk and they're like, hey, you're on fire. And their friend's like, shit, there's a fucking pond or something that they gotta go just jump into.
Okay.
You know, it's just that random stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm that guy. I'm totally cool with doing that stuff. Like, again, barring from hurting somebody else or
Right.
causing anything like that. Do you find that a lot of friends of the firefighters that you've met, I know some of the ones you've met, but do you find that they're a little bit more open, a little bit more risk-taking, a little bit more brash, more, they don't care what really they're saying around people?
Yeah. No, I've noticed that for sure. But I think I like that because I'm comfortable around that. I have some family members that are like that, and I feel more comfortable around them. So I feel like I've just gotten used to it, and it's normal for me.
Could you stick around it for a long time?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah. This isn't going to bother you, is it?
No.
I'm putting a pinch in my mouth. Sorry, Texas. I've been doing this since I was 17. Still got my job, thank God. Not saying I'm going to keep it. All right. So now I want to, I'll use that as a little segue.
Okay.
So we're going to pull away from fire talk and all that other stuff, right? We got to know you a little bit about your likes, dislikes, what you're going to school for and stuff. That's all cool. What I want to know now is more, it's going to be on a personal level, so
Okay.
you can say, no, I don't want to talk about it, or whatever.
Okay.
What are your ethics, I guess, is what I'm getting at. What are your philosophies on life? Where do you get your morals from? What are your morals? Do you even have morals? Mine are very, very small. There's some people that have morals to the point that I think it holds them back. Other people have absolutely no morals at all, and it makes them look like complete asses. People have different philosophies on life. You work hard for the money. Work hard, play harder. Play hard now, work's overrated. Treat others like you want to be treated. Fuck everyone else, just make sure you're happy. I mean, there's a whole bunch of different philosophies in life. No one's right, no one's wrong. One works for somebody else, it doesn't work for another. So where are you at on all that spectrum? Like where does your morality lie? And we'll get political to kind of push that.
Okay.
On the social issues that are going on now, right? Where do you think your morality lies on, say, the whole Black Lives Movement stuff going on right now, and the George Floyd thing and everything else? Now, I'm going to preface this. Let me make sure I say that right. I'm going to preface this by saying, obviously, neither you nor I know absolutely everything there is to know about that situation.
Correct.
What we know is from news sources, Facebook. Those are Am I correct in saying that? Or
Yeah.
have you actually talked to the cop
No,
or George Floyd or the person that videotaped it?
No, I'd say you're pretty safe in your assumptions. there.
Okay.
So I think obviously that the Black Lives Matter movement is important. I was surprised by how much of this is, still going on today with the racism aspect, to the point that we need to have marches. It's just weird, because it's like you tend to think from growing up and going to school and sitting in history classes that, everything that took place years ago with Martin Luther King, that was all in the past. Like, obviously that made a change for the better, but that it's all in the past and that we're better for that now. But it's sad that, like, that's still going on, to the point that people need to march to fight what happened. I don't think that the cop was in the right at all, regardless, like you said, of what George Floyd's history was, what he did.
So, I want to say that regardless of what he did, he didn't deserve what's going on now, right?
Right.
So why do you think people are so upset about America's history now? Like, why does America's history matter now so much? Why aren't we trying to fix what's happening actually now, and let history be history? We're trying to get better. We're still the baby nation of the world.
Yeah.
I mean, like, we are one of the youngest nations in the world.
Yeah.
So we're still learning.
Yeah.
There's still a learning curve. We're not perfect. But why is history dictating all our social issues now?
Yeah, I have found that odd, and that does bother me, and that's something, I think there's multiple things going into that. Part of me thinks that, so a lot of this, I think, is part of what's become known as the cancel culture. People are easily upset by different things, or something, they see something and it offends them, and they immediately think that this offends me, so nobody else can enjoy it. We need to get rid of this. I don't want to look at it, and because I don't want to look at it, nobody else should want to. And I think that that's taken off, and a lot of people are using social media to push the cancel culture along, and more people are getting involved and realizing, if I put up a stink about something, there's a chance that I'll get my way. People want to be noticed. They want to feel heard.
And that, I think that's a human thing. People obviously want to be heard when there's
Right.
an emotion behind that thought, right?
Right. But I feel like it's blown way out of proportion now, because in regards to the history, trying to erase history and pretend it didn't happen, I think that's taking it to a whole nother level, because that's still part of our past. Like you said, we're a baby nation, but it's still something that happened. Whether it was good or bad, it's still something that we can learn a lesson from.
Correct.
It's important for it to still be there, because they say, history is doomed to repeat
If
itself
you
don't
ignore
learn from it.
history, you're doomed to repeat
Right.
it. So why don't we just get rid of all our history? We have a clean slate. Well, if you have a clean slate, you run the risk of repeating,
Correct.
right?
Yeah.
Where you obviously made bad choices in the past, but if you're trying to erase those bad choices and pretend they did, they want you to pretend they didn't happen, but they want you to remember they happened, and it's very confusing.
Yeah.
When I hear some of these things, they're like, well, we did this and this and this, and then you're like, okay, but what about this part of history? And they're like, well, that part doesn't matter. And I was like, well, no, if you're going to have an argument
Right.
and use history as your crutch to support that argument, you have to be willing to use all history to support another person's counter, right?
Right.
Just because it's not the history you're using to explain your point doesn't mean that the history that somebody else is using can explain theirs.
Right. It's still relevant.
It's still relevant. But what I'm noticing is that you can't do that with a lot of these people that are having these ideas. I'm not saying their ideas are bad. There's good intention behind it, I'm sure. But it's hard to understand why their philosophies on certain issues don't carry over to an issue that's similar, right? And their
Yeah.
their excuse is always, well, that's somebody else, or that's something else. It's like, yeah, it's somebody else, it's something else, but the situation's the same. All you're doing is changing the pieces. Instead of the top hat in Monopoly, now that's the car, but it still has to make the same moves. So it's still relevant, but they don't want it to be relevant.
Right.
Right. So I don't understand it. I get people wanting to prove their point.
Yeah.
What I don't like is them not accepting the morality. They don't carry it over
Right.
to another situation that's completely similar, but the chess piece has changed, so it's not. It's like, no, it doesn't work that way.
Right. And I think it's, as far as, the history classes go, I think it's kind of a dangerous situation because you're almost starting to treat history like religion and make it an optional thing in schools and in a kid's education and growing up and stuff, that, it's optional for them to learn about history. It's not essential. They shouldn't, the idea that, parents can pick and choose if their kid learns about history, I don't think is necessarily the smartest. Because like I said, if you don't learn, you're doomed to repeat it. And, there's important things that have happened over time, good or bad, that, shape us as people. And it's important for kids to learn that.
Yeah, I think so too. I might disagree with you on the whole parents getting to choose what their kids learn. I think it's stupid if a parent chooses not to have their kid learn certain things.
Yeah.
But that's my thing. But I think being a parent, I don't think anybody else should have a choice on what goes in and out of my kids' ears.
Yeah.
That's. I mean, I helped create that human being. I should have a say.
Right.
And where they go to school and all that other stuff and what they learn. In saying that, though, I very, very open to this is going a little personal, I'm very open to my kids learning and seeing everything.
Yeah.
I want them to see a completely different point of view than mine. I want them to learn to evaluate it. I want them to, make up their own minds later on, stuff like that. And a lot of people who meet my kids, they're like, wow, they're so grown up. Well, it's because we don't treat them like kids. Even when they were babies, I never talked to them in a baby voice. I read something that if you want your child to learn how to speak faster at a younger age, don't do the baby speak. Don't be, no, you don't do that. When you say hi to them, go, hi, baby. Don't do that. Just say, hey, bud, what's going on? How are you doing?
Yeah.
Even as an infant, you talk to them that way, and they learn how to speak faster.
Okay.
So, but that was my choice as a parent, to do that for them. Growing up, I think parents should have a choice in where their kids go to school, what they learn and stuff. Do all those parents make the right decisions? Do I always make the right decisions? Absolutely not. But it should be a choice. I think it should be a choice. And that's what America was. It was always freedom of choice.
Right.
Right? Nobody took it away from you. I think that's changing. And I think the social issues now, the political issues now, a lot of people are wanting to take over certain aspects of our life on both sides of the aisle, that it's becoming detrimental to us as a civilization. And when it comes to the social issues like the Black Lives Matter movement, now I'm like, I forget who it was, crap, and I don't want to look it up right now, but there was somebody, it was a black actor, and he didn't support the Black Lives movement, and people were asking him why. I mean, you're black, how can you not? And he goes, I support that Black Lives Matter. He goes, I support that. He goes, what I don't support is that Black Lives Matter only when it comes to a police issue. He said, I believe all Black Lives Matter, and when I say that, it's Black Lives Matter when it comes to black on black crime, when it comes to white on black crime, when it comes to the housing, when it comes to economic status. He goes, to me, that's what Black Lives Matter means.
Yeah.
And I was like, I can get behind that. I can get behind that. There are some studies that show that that area do lack, and that's due to our history and how they were treated and where they were put, way back when.
Yeah.
And it's really hard for them to get out of it. But I think that personal responsibility has almost been thrown out the door when it comes to certain things like that. Like the choices they're making, they're using the excuse of, well, it's always been like that, so I have to be this way. When no, really, you can choose to change it. Your personal responsibility plays a point. I understand it's going to be harder for you than others. I get that. I get it's going to be harder. It just like it's harder for somebody that didn't grow up, in a wealthy family to become wealthy. It's harder.
Right.
It is, right? But I'm not going to hate on that wealthy family because their grandfather or great grandfather did what they needed to do to become wealthy. How they became wealthy, that doesn't matter to me. Was it sketchy? Sure. But I'm not going to blame that person 3 generations
Right.
down the line for what their great grandfather did. And I'm not going to blame them for using that wealth or that what people are calling now privilege. I'm not going to blame them. My ancestors didn't do what they did. They could have.
Right.
To have their families down the line be living a little bit more better.
Right.
But I'm not going to blame the 3 generations down the line
Right.
for what was given to them. And that's a personal thing, and I understand, and I get why some people do. I can't do that. It wasn't them. They didn't make those choices.
Right.
And there's a bunch of people now that are actually trying to change how their history was. They're changing, they're switching around, they're treating their money differently than they did back then to make it more respectable.
Right, and that's their decision now, though, and they're trying to make their current situation better. But I feel like you said, like blaming someone 3 generations back, I feel like almost anyone could go back in their family and find somebody who did something at some point that was wrong or sketchy or what have you, and you can basically find fault with anyone.
Yeah, absolutely. And the reason why I wanted to kind of go into this is because I want people to see and hear how within, we're going to go back into the fire aspect, with how the fire, we are different when it comes to that stuff. I'm okay with people disagreeing with me on the podcast and telling me they think I'm completely wrong. So if you think I'm wrong, you can tell me. I'm okay. I'm okay with talking about it. I'm not going to be like, okay, you think I'm wrong, I think you're an asshole. I'm not like that. You think I'm wrong? Cool. If you can give me a logical explanation, awesome. But I want to show people that we have, the people in our lives, the people we work with, have different points of view on all this. We don't agree on some stuff. But at the end of the day, we're still working the same job. We're still caring about each other, and we're still looking out for each other's backs.
Right.
It's like, I think you heard my first podcast where and it is polarizing, the political aspect of the world right now. It's polarizing. I mean, to the point where people are literally writing off family members, completely writing them off just because they have a different political view, whether it be social or economic or whatever. And they're completely writing them off just because they don't agree with them, right?
Yeah.
Or they have it in their head because they have a certain view, it must mean they're a certain way. You don't support Black Lives Matter, you must be racist. Well, no. If you want to really find out about it, ask me. I support all Black Lives Matter and all lives matter that are in those certain situations, but I don't agree with what the mainstream media is putting out as Black Lives Matter. It's run by Marxists. I mean, they said they are trained Marxists, and Marxists want to get rid of the American way. I mean, that's what they're trained to do. But people don't want to hear that. You know, they don't want to acknowledge that part of it, and I think that can be very dangerous.
Yeah. People only really want to acknowledge what they agree with. They
Right.
don't want to see other sides of the story or where somebody else might be coming from.
Right. And even if you don't agree with it, it's okay to at least hear it.
Right.
Right. It's okay to allow them to express it. And that's why, as long as they're not hurting anybody else, as long as it's not causing harm or destruction to anybody or anything else, do whatever speak. Say your piece, you know.
Right.
I'm totally okay with that. I don't agree, but I don't have to agree to be okay with you expressing your opinion. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think most people are like that, but we don't hear that. And I have this saying, and it's usually the loudest person in the room usually has nothing to say. And what I mean by that is that they're constantly screaming and yelling and being loud because they want to be heard. But what they're saying, there's no validity behind it.
Yeah.
There's no thought behind it. There's no conviction. There's no truth. It's just all emotion. Right?
Yeah.
I don't know. But I mean, that's just me. And I think that within the fire department, we do have people that are like that. And it does cause a riff with guys working with other guys, right? There is a little bit of a riff. You know,
Right.
like,
Well, because you guys are around each other far more than people are in any other job.
right. Like we can live with some, I can be in a firehouse with somebody that I totally don't agree with their lifestyle. I totally don't agree with their points of view on life. But when we go on a call and they're in a fire and I'm their backup, I'm going to treat them like they're my brother. Like they're not dying alone in that house. If I have to die trying to get them out, that's what I'm going to do. It doesn't matter that I don't agree with them. It doesn't matter. But that aspect doesn't carry over outside of the firehouse with the general public.
Right.
And I don't know why. Like, why? Why can't it be that? Do you think maybe you know or have an opinion as to why it can't be that way? Like, for instance, if you ever needed my help and Kurt wasn't around, like today, he was at work. You guys are down to one vehicle, so you couldn't get here. I was going to go pick you up. I ended up calling you an Uber instead, but I still got you here, right? And I'm gonna take you home and I'm gonna help you out. You need to go somewhere ahead. You need to go to the store before you go back home. Cool, we'll stop by the store. I need to go to the store too. You know, no big deal. But I'm gonna help because you're family. You are family, and I want you to know that you are family. I really do see you as family. I know we're getting to know each other as we're doing this now, and we're getting to know each other as we hang out a little bit more and stuff like that. But you're family. You're part of my family, even if there's some parts of our lives that aren't the same. I mean, obviously, just come and look at our homes. Your home, and your home, you walk into your home and it's like you're walking into a Tim Burton fucking shrine. You know, I fucking love it. I fucking love your house. The purple, the black, the fucking Nightmare Before Christmas everywhere. Like, oh, I fucking love it. But you come to my house and it's a little bit more fancy, white walls and stuff like that. You know, we have different lifestyles, but that doesn't mean anything to me because you're family. You know,
I appreciate that.
Yeah,
because like you said, like not a lot of people outside of the firehouse can really have that mindset and see people in that light. And I think part of it is your job and what you're doing. You're used to that family dynamic, and you know, you guys are putting yourselves on the line every day so you have that helping mentality, and people don't walk around every day with that mentality. You know, a lot of people you see, even with this whole COVID situation, are
God.
more
Don't
not
get
trying
me
to go into
started on
that, but like people are, you know, me. They're concerned about their well-being. You know, their family was well-being too, but mostly their well-being. They're not concerned about the person in the checkout line behind them at Walmart. They're not concerned about, you know, their neighbor 3 doors down maybe. They're concerned about them in that moment. And so people live in those bubbles, and they don't know how to get out of it. And, you know, you guys, you step out of your, you know, small family bubble, if you'd have it that way, of your house, and you go to the firehouse, which is a larger family dynamic where you've got people coming from other small houses, and you mingle with them, and you hear their opinions on things, but you're all there with the same genuine goal to help people.
Right, and I think that most firefighters even think that the people we're helping, they're even on that level as well as family. Because I was telling Kurt when we were talking, is just like the way we are is we're going to help you no matter what your background,
Yeah.
right? If we go to a call and some guy is having a cardiac arrest, but he has KKK written across his chest, or a Nazi flag, or fuck white people, or whatever. We see that all the time. I mean, we've treated child molesters, we've treated spouse abusers, you know, we've treated people shooting at cops, but even though we don't like what they did or what they do, we treat them with the same respect and same tenacity that we would anybody else. We're going to still try to save your life. We're going to do everything we can to do that, right? And it was that, and that goes back to that whole thing that I was talking about. Is just like, I don't understand how outside of our civil service job people can't just get along with other people, because there's going to be somebody, if you ever need help, there's going to be a firefighter out there that doesn't agree with your lifestyle on the outside.
Yeah.
Right? If you met them on the outside, they're not going to agree with your lifestyle. They don't agree with your philosophies on life. They think you're morally completely wrong, but they're gonna pretty much come as close as they can to sacrificing themselves to help you, right? And your lifestyle is never going to change that idea, what they do for you. And so say, and I use this example in my opening episode, is to say somebody that has a completely different morality, completely different political view than you, you'd never talk to them. As a matter of fact, you hate them, that kind of person on the outside. But he's a firefighter. He came and he saved your child, or he saved your life, or he saved your property. And in that process, he ended up getting hurt, or she ended up getting hurt. Are you still going to go thank them?
Yeah.
Because if it was anybody else, if it was somebody else, you'd write them off. I mean, I've seen shit where they're like, I hope they all die. You know, I hope we get rid of them. I hope people like that didn't exist.
Right.
But those people do exist, and they exist within the fire department too.
Yeah.
And they're still willing to help you, even though you want them to be gone.
Yeah.
So why not be open, a little bit more open to just hearing them out, or understanding them, or just respecting the fact that they're just another human being.
Right.
Right. And I think that that's lost on the general public, and they don't understand that. And it's the same for cops too. The majority of cops are not what you're seeing on social media.
Right.
Right. It's social media. It's like that whole thing on social media. When you go to somebody's page, you're seeing the best of their lives.
Right.
But when people want to show the worst, that's all you're going to see is
Right.
the worst.
You're seeing a very small snippet of
Right.
their life.
It's that whole, the minority is the loudest one in the room right now.
Yeah.
They're the only thing being heard. And for whatever reason, people are listening. And I don't understand why.
Yeah.
I don't understand it. I mean, when you do the numbers, it's a very small number. It seems large, but that's because of what we're being fed.
Right.
It seems very large. It seems like it's bigger than what we think. And it is. There is something to it, but it's not as big when you look at the numbers. It's really not all that big. It's the minority controlling things. And I've never understood that. I never understood the minority controlling the mass.
Yeah.
So, but I'm sorry, I went off on a tangent on that.
No, you're
but
good.
I wanted to get your point of view on that stuff because, my wife, she goes, it seems like trouble finds you, or people that need help find you without even looking at it. Right? There was a case where we're at a restaurant and a little girl started choking. I didn't even think. I just went up and I started giving the Heimlich maneuver. I didn't even introduce myself to the parents, nothing. I just started giving the Heimlich, the chip spit out, went back, sat down, started eating again. And my wife was like, "You just saved this little girl from choking." And I'm like, "Yeah, she's fine."
Mm-hmm.
But those things find me.
Okay.
Have you noticed that with Kurt sometimes, that you guys will be out and about and something happens and he kind of just jumps into action without even really thinking about it?
We haven't had a situation like that.
Really?
Yeah, we have not.
So you never rolled up on an accident and he would get out and go help?
I don't know. Not that I can think of, because usually I think the times that we've been near a car accident, everybody's already on scene, or we're way far back in the traffic jam. By the time we get up there, traffic's moving, the situation's taken care of. Off the top of my head, I can't think of anything. But I can personally kind of relate to that story you told with the little girl choking, because my sister was choking one day.
Mm-hmm.
And I was about to walk out the door. I was in my car about to back out, and my mom opens the door and starts I was in the car, so I couldn't hear. She starts yelling and she's waving her arms, and I'm like, what does she want? And so I open the door and she's like, your sister, she's choking, her skin's changing color, I don't know what to do. And I flew in the house and gave her the Heimlich maneuver, and she spit the piece up, and that was that. And she kind of just stood there shocked, and I just was like, okay, she's good, I'm gonna go to the store now. The instinct kicked in.
Mm-hmm.
But I think if you're put in a situation, you get that fight or flight reaction, you know what to do. And if you've been taught how to do it, like you guys have, or like I had taken a CPR class, so I knew, it just kicks in, and to you, obviously the situation's different because you're a firefighter, you work in the field, and I had just taken the class because for babysitting you have to.
But it's crazy how having the knowledge almost changes your complete psyche on how you react to a certain situation. Yeah. Just having the knowledge.
Yeah.
Because if you didn't have that knowledge, it could have been panic. It could have been hysteria.
Right. And I'm sure you guys see people that, you show up on scene and the person doesn't know how to give CPR.
Oh, all the time. All the time. We've actually gone to calls where people were afraid to give CPR because they didn't know how. And even though dispatch is trying to tell them how, they're just so uncomfortable, so afraid that they just neglect to do it.
Yeah.
And we get frustrated. It's just listen to the dispatcher, because even bad CPR is better than no CPR.
Okay.
Sometimes, but if you're pumping on their chest, that's good. I mean, even if it's not adequate, something
is being done
to help mitigate a bad situation. And it's funny how knowledge in itself can change the psyche on how you react to certain situations, just having knowledge. But I think that goes to everything, right? If you have knowledge about certain situations, I think that changes how you react. when that situation arises.
Yeah. And I have noticed that in Kurt, because there's been scenarios where, you know, someone will get hurt in some way, something minor, but
like when
I'll react to it differently.
Like when I cut Ethan's finger.
Yeah. So to
Sorry,
me, that's,
Ethan.
you know.
Sorry.
So to me, that's, you know, for me in the moment, that's not something I'm trying to deal with. So I'm just like, holy shit, what do I do? You know, I got to find bandages. I don't know what to do, you know. But Kurt walks in the room to that. He's just like, okay, this is what's going on. This is how we fix it. And he's calm, level-headed.
Yeah, like all of us were like, oh, he didn't get blood in the food, did he? And he's over here bleeding profusely from his finger. That was an accident, I swear. I did not mean to cut his finger. We were just both stupid enough to go reach for the knife at the same time. Because it could have been me. If he would have gotten the knife first, it could have been me. But yeah, that whole aspect of knowledge and it changing how you react to certain things, I think helps with all aspects of life. And the reason why I say that is because we're doing this podcast and people are going to listen to it and people are going to hear new people that are in relationships with firefighters. They're going to hear these ideas and how you dealt with it, right? And so they're gaining knowledge about what it's like to be in that fire life before they actually make the decision to get into it.
Right.
But I think having that knowledge is going to allow them to change their psyche, change their morality, change how they're going to deal with it to make it work.
Right.
It's tough being with a firefighter. It's tough being with a civil servant. It really is. How you choose to do it, how my wife chooses to do it, how all spouses that don't really understand choose to do it. Hey, thank you. Seriously, you guys support us in more ways than we'd ever be able to actually be able to explain, because you don't judge us in any way, shape, or form for doing the job.
Yeah.
But you also understand that it's not just a job.
Right.
Like, you're okay with that. You're okay with it being literally a part of our lives, inside and outside the firehouse. Yeah. Would you change anything about this, the part of being a firewife, the part of Kurt being a firefighter, you know, the stuff you've learned? Would you change anything that you're doing now, or are you kind of still in that I'm kind of just letting things happen and then dealing with them as they go? Has your idea of how to deal with Kurt being a firefighter changed throughout the years?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely don't let my imagination get ahead of me and run off and cause me to worry
like it used to.
Like it used to. You know, I try to take one day at a time. You know, sometimes he will text me and it'll kind of freak me out because he'll be like, hey, you know, I was just at an accident and this and this happened, or hey, there was a structure fire and this and this happens. So my immediate concern, you know, is, are you okay? But I feel like I've gotten better at dealing with that because I'm like, you know, this is his job, this is his life, and this is what makes him happy. And if that's what makes him happy, then this is what makes me happy. And, you know, I can see visibly that he loves the job. And, you know, he wants to do it. He wakes up ready to do it. And, you know, I'm not someone who I could ever see myself doing your job. Like, I think what you guys do is awesome, but I know that, like, personally, I couldn't do the job. So I think it's awesome that, you know, you guys have so much passion for what you do. And I lost my train of thought.
That's okay. Do you think, let me, you see, and I've heard that before, that you guys are awesome for what you do and everything like that, but, and it's because of the passion, what we love to do, but do you think you would have that same feeling for him if he loved being a garbage man? And I keep going to this analogy because my wife made a very good point a long time ago that everybody has a purpose. Every job has a purpose, right? but ours has this immediate effect that people see and can feel and touch. And that's when you have that, it's like that instant gratification thing. When you can see an immediate effect, it changes how you feel about it, right? But with garbage men, if garbage men just all of a sudden didn't exist, right, we'd have piles of garbage
Right.
everywhere, smoke everywhere, and it can get to a point where it's hazardous living conditions if we didn't have them, but we do. But we don't see the effects of that, right?
Right.
We don't on a day-to-day basis really understand the effects of having people that are willing to go on a truck, pick up trash, and toss it away from the general public in a sanitary way. We don't see the effects on that on a day-to-day basis. So when you think of garbage men, general population is like, oh, it's garbage men. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? With me, and I used to think that too, like, my job's way more important. And then I was like, well, hold on. After listening to my wife, she goes, well, what if there was no garbage men? Like, how important is your job now?
Right.
Like, really? How important is it? I mean, they help people. They really do.
Right.
So their job is really important.
And there's a lot of jobs that are like that. I mean, where would we be if we had no cops? Or where would we be if we had no postal workers?
Right.
Stuff like that.
And like I mean, how I can't. And I think, like I'm going back. I think it's that immediate effect that is seen when we arrive and we help. Right. It's
Yeah.
that immediate. Oh, so now we can associate good with firefighters, good with cops when they stop the bad guy or when
Yeah.
they come help you. It's an immediate thing that you see. But with other certain jobs, they don't get that. And so I've learned through the years, because it wasn't like that. I always thought my job is way more important than other jobs. Mine's way more risky, and there is some parts that are a little bit more risky, but it's this feeling that I have learned to not downplay somebody else's profession, because somewhere there's a want and a need for those things.
Yeah.
And I don't want people to think all the time that firefighters are this Hollywood thing, that
Right.
we are important because it's needed, but there's a lot of needed things out there that we just don't give respect to.
Right.
We need, as firefighters, a support system, but I don't think that support system gets enough recognition. Wives, children, friends, family, the people we work with, stuff like
Yeah.
that. And that's why this podcast is happening, because I want to show those things. I want to be able to say, hey, look, this is kind of what makes us fire, right? We're all different. We all do these crazy things. And we have people in our lives that, even though they don't see it, they still deal with it.
Right.
And you're part of what makes us firefighters. You are a part of what makes me a firefighter, just by being associated with Kurt, because you're his wife. You're part of my family now. So you are a part of what makes me a firefighter, because now I have somebody else to care about. Somebody else to call and be like, hey, how are you doing?
Yeah.
I know how Kurt's doing. How are you doing? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that's a little bit lost. Excuse me. I think that's a little bit lost with some of us. We forget that the people that are in the lives of the firefighters we work with are just as important to us, because they keep them sane. And we forget to thank them on a personal level as well.
Yeah.
So, but and I'm going to go ahead and start wrapping this up, but I'm going to ask you this. If you could put into words, and it's hard because I can't, if you can put into words, what do you think it is that makes us fire? What do you think it is that makes, and when I say us, I'm including you. I'm
Okay.
including the family. I'm including the firefighters. What do you think it is that makes us firefighters? Say that again.
I have to take a second to think about that. I mean, I would say that there's a whole bunch of different aspects. I would say it's a whole bunch of little pieces that make up this big picture of, what makes us fire. Because, you guys wouldn't you wouldn't be able to do your job without each other for support. You like you said, without your family for support, without your parents for support, without the people above you to support you and help you. Your chief, your lieutenants and stuff. You wouldn't be fire without the people that you're helping on a day-to-day basis. Like, yes, people can make stupid decisions and, you always have that job security, but the fact that you guys are willing to go into harm's way for, like you said, whoever it is, regardless of their political views, their background, you're seeing them for their, what they are innately, which is that they're human, you're human, and you're bringing it down to that level. And a lot of people don't understand that. And I feel like we said earlier, that's why a lot of people can't, debate with people and, get along, because they aren't willing to go down to that level and see that you and I are the same, even though we have different views. So I feel like, you wouldn't be fire without the people you're helping and, without the people that are at the hospitals and the nurses, the staff, like all of that. Every little thing that you guys come in contact with is part of what makes you you. They're all little pieces of one giant puzzle.
And that's a good answer. But I'm going to tell you that still doesn't answer the question. Because there's still so many questions within that answer.
Yeah.
So, like, why do we still help those people? What is it? What is that thing that drives us to help people?
Desire. You want to help people.
Right. But with all these different backgrounds and moralities and philosophies and everything else, there's that, we want to help people. Okay, cool. But how did you get there being so different from everybody else? What got you to that point? Where is that? Where's that explanation that puts us all, who are so different, into this life? What is it? It's desire to help people. Great. Okay. Yeah. But there's a lot of people that desire to help people.
But they do different jobs.
And they do different jobs, right? So why do we do it the way we do it? What is it? What is it? And Kurt said the same thing. He says, I think it's a bunch of little things. So it was like, okay, but those little things still have questions attached to them. So, but I'm okay with not having a definite answer. That's the whole point of all this, is to try to get close to that definite answer.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'll ever get there. So that means this podcast might be going on for a really long time. But I'm okay with that. I'm okay with it being a bunch of small answers, but I really want to try to figure it out, because it's a human thing that we can't explain.
Yeah. But I mean, that's okay, because you can also bring people back and see how they've evolved the longer they've been involved with the fire service.
Right. Yeah. Like, in a year, your idea of Kurt being a firefighter can totally change. You can be like, fuck this job, he's become an asshole, or he just, there's a bunch of stuff that can change. But all in all, I do agree with you. I think it is a bunch of different things. A bunch of people help make us fire. I still haven't gotten that answer that I think I'm satisfied with.
Yeah.
And and I'm going to continue searching for it. I thank you for being a part and trying to help us find it.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You're considered one of my very many wives within the fire department. I care for you just as much as I do for Kurt and for any one of the guys. So I want you to know that I really do respect you for supporting him, because without your support of him, he wouldn't be doing what he was doing. We would have never met. So there's a whole bunch of different things tied to that. So you should know that I do care about you. I thank you for being here. Thanks for sharing your side of the story and your little bit of your views. We can go on forever, I'm sure, but we'll go ahead and end it there. Is there anything else you want to say, kind of any last piece of advice you want to give to people listening?
Not that I can think of. Just that I feel like the longer you're involved with fire, the more you learn and the more stuff changes. I mean, there's still stuff that I would love to know more about. To this day, I still have never done a ride along.
Come on. Come on. Literally, all it is a piece of paper you sign and come hang out with us for 24 hours.
We've just never been able to make stuff line up. Like, I've been wanting to do it, and Kurt switches stations, from time to time. So he's like, I got to be back at my original station, and we're doing training today or this or that.
Well,
so
you
this
can
isn't
be there
best
for
day
the
to come.
training.
Okay.
That's actually something that you might want to see.
Okay.
You can see that, because a lot of people have this idea that we sit around all day, all the time. And there's some days that happens. But when people dog us about that, it's just like, well, we don't get paid to fight fire all the time. We get paid to be willing to do what you're not.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And part of that is we have to train all the time too. So you should come check that out, because that is part of the job. That's part of what we need to do. Cool. So you should always come out there. Well, again, Sarah, thank you for coming. I really do appreciate your time. I appreciate you jumping in that Uber with, I'm sure, was a weird guy. His picture looked weird. So thank you for your time. Thank you for your insight.
Yeah, no problem.
I got to give you a ride home now.
Guess so.
Yeah. I'm not riding you home. I'm giving you a ride home. Just want people to know that that was a bad joke. Anyway, all right. What makes us fire, guys? Thank you for listening. Sarah, again, thank you for coming. You guys get out there, have fun, be safe, and peace. Have a good one.
All right, guys, that was Sarah. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Be on the lookout for the next episode after this. The next episode, we're going to have Jason Patton from Fire Department Chronicles and Fire Department Coffee. This guy had a lot to say. I want to again thank Sarah for coming onto the podcast and sharing her point of views, sharing who she was. And I think her story is going to be able to help a lot of people out there, especially a lot of new couples, on maybe trying to figure out how to live within this fire life that we live in. You guys, please go follow What Makes Us Fire podcast on Instagram at What Makes Us Fire, Facebook at What Makes Us Fire, Twitter at What Makes Us Fire, YouTube at What Makes Us Fire podcast, and you can email me at whatmakesusfire@yahoo.com. Also, there is a brand new TikTok, and guess what it is? What Makes Us Fire. You guys go find us out, follow us, give us those likes, please share the podcast. Much love to you guys. Thank you for listening, and stay tuned again.